They were the most favored renters in the synagogue. So you reach in there and there'd be some.
Good morning. Today's opening words are from Mozi, who lived from 470 to 391 BCE. Mozi was a Chinese sage and founder of the philosophical school known as Moism. When all the people in the world love one another, then the strong will not overpower the weak. The many will not oppress the few. The wealthy will not mock the poor. The honored will not disdain the humble. And the cunning will not deceive the poor. Fine.
Good morning. So I'm giving the testimonial for our stewardship campaign this year. So I thought I'd say a little bit about myself. And it was way back in 1990 that my first wife, Cheryl, that some of you knew, and I were married by Elizabeth Sella Jones. And we've been very involved with the church. Our daughter was born a few years after that. And many of the people that we know best, we got to know through RE and through being parents of kids. And I see Jean and Eric and Shelley and Kurt Covey. So we got to know many close friends and lots of kids through RE, and that's an important part of my experience, and I think many of our newer, younger members also. Then in 2007, my wife passed away, just suddenly, unexpectedly, and it was having the support of other members of the congregation was a very important thing to me and to Caitlin. Then, not long after that, a couple of years later, Laura and I, although we met online through Match.com, the first time we ever met in person, face-to-face, was right here in this sanctuary. And now I'm talking about stewardship, and we are doing a different kind of stewardship campaign, pledge campaign this year. It's the cottage meeting style of campaign. And at the back of the sanctuary, we have sign-up sheets spread across the table, and no more than 8 people sign up at any one place, but please do choose. They're arranged in chronological order from the earliest on the left to the latest on the right. So please do find a time and a place that works for you and sign up. The first of these will be just 8 days from now on President's Day at John Miller and Marilyn Schuler's place out Discovery Bay. They've got a beautiful location on the bay and promise all sorts of fun and excitement. Many people have talked about, they're going to have whatever. Anyway, I won't get carried away going through all of the different volunteers at all the different places, but please do sign up. We'd like to have everybody in the congregation choose a place of convenience for meeting. So please do that at your earliest convenience after the service. Thanks very much.
And once again, we have the opportunity to begin our service with kindling the flame, and please join us in the words, "This flame affirms the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment." And for our opening hymn, it's in the gray hymnal, number 102. Please rise if you are willing and able.
The occasion of Chinese New Year allows us the opportunity to consider Chinese religion and how it can inspire us ethically and spiritually. In our adult RE program that I've been leading for the last, we've had 3 of 6 sessions, and we're studying the 6 sources of UU kind of spiritual and theological framework that people have, and one is world religions, which inspire us, as it says, in our spiritual and ethical lives. So today we'll consider in particular Chinese religion. I will touch briefly on the origins of Chinese religion, on some of its recurrent themes, and on how insights gleaned from these sources can be constructively applied to our lives, and finally, a little bit on the New Year's celebrations themselves, their intention and their promise. As today's service is intergenerational, we've divided up my remarks into 4 shorter than usual segments, so it's not too, talky for the youth and for the grown-ups. China is an ancient land with ancient traditions. Religiously and culturally, China can be seen as continually oscillating between 2 poles: the down-to-earth humanism of Confucianism and the transcendental mysticism of the Taoists. Both traditions claim their beginnings 2.5 millennia ago. 6th century BCE China was a period of social and political turmoil. The old imperial order of the Zhou dynasty was breaking down. Small and intermediate-sized states vied for power and authority. Into this situation came Confucius, an oft-thwarted office seeker. Despite traveling for many years, offering his services to one magistrate after another, he was mostly unsuccessful at securing any kind of permanent or secure employment, until he quit seeking government appointments and became instead a teacher. His name was actually Kangxi, Latinized into Confucius 2,000 years later by Jesuit missionaries. After his death in 479 BCE, works purporting to record the dialogues, teachings, and biological narratives of Kangxi's life appeared, the most clearly authentic of which, the Analects, will be quoted a little later in this morning's reading. So 479 BC, he died. Well, 480 BC, Aeschylus, I think, or Euripides was born, one of them. And the Thermopylae, the great battle of the Greeks defeating Xerxes and the Persians. So you get an idea. It's really the very beginnings of Greek culture, and it was kind of the grounding after a period of great turmoil in China of their culture. Well, the Analects is the compilation of Confucius' teachings. Now, Confucianism is both a religion and a system of social and ethical philosophy. It is not at all like most Western religions with their revealed doctrines about God. Confucius was both a humanist and a reflective philosopher. His teaching is both practical and open to the transcendental order of reality. He probes the nature of relationships and the cultivation of virtue, both of which have a bearing on political leadership. While there's no single theme to the Analects, many of its chapters have Confucius exhorting his followers regarding 2 noble ideals: benevolence and ritual piety. Benevolence is sensitivity to the personhood of others, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and being sensitive to that in all your interactions. Ritual piety, decorously regulating one's speech and deportment. It's holding your tongue, deferring to your superiors, your elders, your ancestors, and so on. The two virtues are actually intimately linked, almost one and the same. Thus, Confucius tells his disciple Yan Quan to control oneself and return to ritual propriety is to act with benevolence. The Analects is mainly concerned with the application of ritual and ethics in public life. Throughout its pages, Confucius examines and re-examines the motives and conduct of his disciples, from their preparation for an official career through their years of official service.
Time for the children and youth who'd like to come forward to come on up to the first row. So we are about to enter the period of 15 days when we're going to celebrate the Chinese New Year, or some people call it the Lunar New Year. And there are lots of different things that go into that celebration. The kids have created some lanterns, which you see hung up there. Can you pick out the ones that you created? Yeah. So, and there's beautiful decoration here in red. And I'm wearing red clothes, and some of you are too. So the Chinese New Year is also called the Spring Festival. It's looking forward to spring coming. And it's also called Nian. Now there's a legend about why the Chinese celebrate the New Year in the way that they do. An ancient legend about an ancient time. I'm curious, how many of you have ever felt afraid of something? A couple of people. All right. So there was once a time when there were people who were really afraid because there was a monster. And the monster's name was Nian. And that monster on the new moon used to come down and chase the people. And of course they were scared. And so the tradition was that they would close their houses and lock their doors when the sun went down on the night of the new moon. There was once a wise man, though, who said, I think I have a solution. I think this monster Nian is so bold and scary and furious because you are scared of him. And I think he's afraid of loud noises, and I think he's afraid of fires, and I think he's really afraid of the color red. So he said, why don't we all, on the night of the new moon, we'll get together and we'll make some fires, and we'll put red things everywhere, and we'll put red clothes on, and we'll make lots and lots of noise with drums and gongs and rattles. And so they did that. And guess what? Nian comes down from the mountain, and he's going to sneak up and he's going to catch some people. But then they make fires and sounds, and they have terrible red things everywhere. And everywhere he goes, Nian keeps running into these people with red things and making noises and making fires. And he gets scared, And he runs away, and he runs, and he runs, and he gets completely exhausted and falls down. Jan ran away. So ever since that time, people have celebrated the new year, the coldest, darkest night of the new moon, the first new moon of the year, by celebrating with fire in lanterns, and red things, and making loud noises. And after church today, we're going to go out, and if you'd like to, we can make some loud noises. Because some of us made some loud noise makers. Yes. Can we make fires? We are going to make finger fires. All right? Because we don't want to burn the place down. Yes, Kyle?
Can we set the whole entire universe on fire?
No. So after the service, we'll do that. Okay? So that's the story. One of the stories. There are actually several stories about the Chinese New Year. So we'll be celebrating some more after church. And now let's go back to our classes. And Bob Thornhill is going to come up and speak to us. Our seats. I'm sorry, did I say classes? Yeah. We're going back to our seats.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over. Thank you, Bob. I'm Bob Thornhill. I'm on the Board of Trustees. I've been a member here for about 4 years or so. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Livermore. We're a welcoming congregation, a congregation of open hearts and open minds. And while we're here, we're growing together, as is on our front of our order of service, in spirit, reason, fellowship, and justice. If you're here for the first or second time, we thank you especially for being here. We hope you'll stay for coffee and conversation afterwards. It's a nice day today, and we'll probably have it out on the patio. We welcome anyone, wherever you are, on your spiritual journey, whether you've been Unitarian Universalist for a long time or you're just now coming. We have quite a few things going on in our community. There are announcements and information on an insert in your order of service, the colored insert. I have a couple more here. You've all received in the mail recently an opportunity to tell the board who you would like to have on a search committee looking for a new permanent settled minister. We're getting those back now. But if you haven't sent yours in, we urge you to send them in as soon as you can. We need to tabulate them. Also, we're looking for a Facebook administrator. If you didn't know, we have a Facebook page, a Facebook site. And we need someone who can take that over and be an administrator for that site. If you haven't looked at it, it's a good site. Okay. Shortly we'll have our joys and sorrows, and if you have anything you'd like to share, there are slips in the back of the sanctuary. You can hand it to the worship leader during the lighting of candles. We believe, and our religious tradition states, each person is worthy and sacred. In that spirit, turn to your left and your right to greet each other and welcome whoever is sitting near you.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning. So as Reverend Stephen told you, this reading today is from the Analects by Confucius. And this is what he wrote. When Zulu, Zheng His, Yan Yu, and Kung His Hua were seated in attendance, the master, Confucius, said, "Do not feel constrained simply because I am a little older than you are. You are in the habit of saying, 'My abilities are not appreciated.' But if someone did appreciate your abilities, do tell me how you would go about things." Zulu promptly answered, "If I were to administer a state of 1,000 chariots situated between powerful neighbors, troubled by armed invasions and by repeated famines, I could, within 3 years, give the people courage and a sense of direction. Chu, what about you? If I were to administer an area measuring 60 or 70 li square, or even 50 or 60 li square, I could, within 3 years, bring the size of the population up to an adequate level. As to the rites and music, I would leave that to an abler gentleman. Chia, how about you? I do not say that I already have the ability, but I am ready to learn. On ceremonial occasions in the ancestral temple or in diplomatic gatherings, I should like to assist as a minor official in charge of protocol, properly dressed in my ceremonial cap and robes. Tian, how about you? After a few dying notes came the final chord, and then he stood up from his lute. I differ from the other 3 in my choice. The master said, "What harm is there in that? After all, each man is stating what he has set his heart upon." Jian said, "In late spring, after the spring clothes have been newly made, I should like, together with 5 or 6 adults and 6 or 7 boys, to go bathing in the river He and enjoy the breeze on the rain altar, and then go home chanting poetry." The master sighed and said, "I am in favor of Jian."
If the ethical humanism of Confucianism is one pole of Chinese culture, the naturalistic mysticism of Taoism is the other. Taoism's roots lie in the pre-literate native religion of Chinese antiquity. It was not written down until the 4th century BCE in the form of the Tao Te Ching, ascribed to Lao Tzu, which is Chinese for old master. According to traditions, Lao Tzu was a contemporary of Confucius, a librarian who, weary of the world and ready to retire, set off for the western mountains. And when he came to the gate to the mountain pass, the gatekeeper saw somehow that he was a wise man. He said, "Oh, you can't leave. We need your wisdom." And he said, "Oh, no, I'm out of here." And he said, well, then write down your wisdom and bequeath it to us. And so, persuaded by the gatekeeper to do so before he left. The sage returned 3 days later with 81 aphoristic poems, the Tao Te Ching. This morning's meditation, which I'll read a little later, Mystic Unity, is one of them. Now, Tao, the Tao, we know that symbol, kind of yin-yang symbol, and people talk about Tao. Tao is not God. It's more primal than God. The source from whence all gods and everything else arise. Tao Te Ching means the way and its power. Tao is the primal pattern of reality, the primary program, the natural order and flow of the universe. Taoists believe there's no supernatural world, only the natural world. And Tao, symbolized by these kind of interlocking tadpoles, black and white, that's the pattern. Nature is always changing. Nevertheless, Tao is kind of like the symbol of the cycle of the sun. It remains the same always, operating as yin and yang, day following night, following day, following night. Yin and yang symbolize universal polarities, pairs of opposites recognizable everywhere throughout the natural world, negative and positive, male and female, light and dark, good and evil, earth and heaven. Tao is the implicit unity antecedent to all categories. Yin and yang are the explicit duality seen in our lives. They thoroughly permeate the sensible world. For Lao Tzu and his successors, Tao is the natural order of things. Tao is that from which one cannot deviate. That from which you can deviate is not Tao. Ordinary mind is Tao. Ordinary, yet subtle and elusive. Tao is like water, surrounding and flowing through all things. The human order, the order of society, concerned as it is with failure and success, deviates and falls out of sync. On this, Taoists and Confucius tend to agree. Much of what passes for the meritorious conduct in the world is, in fact, pretense and posturing. Indeed, as soon as folks start talking about morality, true virtue is, by and large, a thing of the past. The louder a person decries immorality in public, the more likely they are to indulge in it privately. As it says in the Tao Te Ching, in the degradation of the great way came benevolence and righteousness. With the exaltation of learning and prudence comes immense hypocrisy. The disordered family is full of dutiful children and parents. The disordered society is full of patriots. Confucius concurs. True virtue is modest and heartfelt and never calls attention to itself. This is why he commends Tien, the flutist, for stating honestly what his heart was set upon, swimming with friends and children and then singing together as they walk home. If we were all so down to earth, society would be better off, and all of us within it. Chinese culture, then, can be thought of as a 2,500-year oscillation between two polarities, the outer-directed social ethics of Confucius and the inner-directed stillness of Lao Tzu. In a way, they're sort of the yin and yang of Chinese tradition. Neither alone suffices. Chinese religion understands this. Indeed, each tradition includes the other within itself, just as the dark yin includes a dot of white and the white yang a dot of the dark. True spirituality always includes both ethics and insight. Unshackled by the Aristotelian dualism of the West, when I say that, according to Aristotle, something's either A or not A, but it can never be both at the same time. It has to either be black or white. But the Chinese is not shackled by Aristotle. They never paid any attention to Aristotle. They never even heard of him. So it always has embraced this both and understanding of life. Belatedly, the West is catching up. For instance, modern physics understands light as both waves and particles, and neither description alone can explain it. To understand light, we need to think both and, not either or. So it is with China and with reality itself. I'm convinced that seeing reality through a both and yin-yang lens is central to spiritual insight and ultimately to our global health and future. This goes far beyond China. Consider, for instance, Unitarian Universalism. To fully appreciate our tradition, it seems to me one has to balance the rational, thought-centered Unitarianism with Universalism's emphasis on growing our hearts and souls. Even within the Unitarian tradition, the deism of Jefferson and Adams became, by the 1830s, too much of a head trip, until balanced by the intuitive, romantic counterweight that was transcendentalism. We need both if we want to get a full grasp on life and human destiny and promise, or so it seems to me. Head and heart, ethics and insight, science and faith. Life, after all, is dynamic and in constant transformation. Living life fully and honestly and virtuously requires appreciating the tension between its opposite poles, riding that tension and integrating it into how we see the world and how we behave within the world and how we treat one another.
The back of your hymnal, number 602. And we'll read together some words from ancient Chinese wisdom. And if you're not able to read yet, you can quietly listen to these wise words. I'll read the plain type and I'll invite you to speak the italicized type. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart.
Go down here. Joys and sorrows is an opportunity for people to come forward and light a candle. Those who wish to have their prayers heard publicly can write it on a little slip of paper and hand it to Pat, who will be the worship associate for this. Let's join in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of community in which we share strength and find common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts to one another at this moment, seeking to bring into our circle of concern all who are struggling, who are worried, who are ill, who are in pain either in body or in spirit, and those who are lonely or feel that they have been wronged, those who are mourning and feel the great loss. Elise Rossau notes that she needs helpers for Margaret Cook's memorial service, which will be on March 3rd. We're all mourning Margaret's death, helping Elise and Michael and Piper with supporting the memorial service is a nice and good way to mourn together. We also are rejoicing in the good news that some candles have been lit to symbolize. In particular, Stephanie Fish, who had a serious operation 10 days ago, is at home now and recovering well, and actually getting up and about some, though not back to work yet. We are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity and with the whole universe. We are grateful for the consciousness that we share, the consciousness that gives us the power to remember, to be creative, and to care for one another. Now join me in the spirit of meditation and in the words of Lao Tzu. The moment of realization is silent, ineffable. He who babbles and raves does not know. Such people are clueless. Close the apertures, guard the senses, dull the edges, let go the entanglements, soften the light, let the dust settle, be submerged in the one. And then, unscathed by love, hate, unmoved by praise, blame, not made less by loss, nor more by gain, you are the one in all this world who has true contentment. In that spirit, let us share silence together. Around the beginning of the Common Era, that is around the year 0, Buddhism entered China. Buddhism started in India about 600 BC, 500 some. It took about 600 years to Bodhidharma, legendary missionary, who brought Buddhism to China. it intermingled with what it found there until, by the 700s, there were 3 religions, each of which incorporated aspects of the other 2, so Taoism, Confucianism, and now Buddhism. This was the period of the Tang Dynasty, an era of beautiful art, music, and poetry, and of stable government. By the turn of the first millennium, Chinese, or Chan Buddhism, had been transformed. Exported to Japan over the next many centuries, it became Zen. That which remained in China had, by the 12th century, merged into a neo-Confucianistic amalgam. It has been more or less the same ever since. Indeed, recent government-sponsored surveys on spirituality in China have found the number of traditional religious believers among the country's nearly 1.4 billion people far higher than previously believed, and amounting, despite communism's official atheism, to as many as 300 million people. It's interesting, in the history of China, periodically there's a new dynasty, and the Chinese communists aren't the first people to outlaw religion, the first official Chinese autocrats to make religion illegal. It's happened about 5 times. It's gone on for many generations. And then every time when it ends, before long, all those sacred texts which were burned and banned turn up again. One of the reasons Americans traditionally have loved the Chinese, I suspect, is because they're so down to earth. Take the idea of life after death. Confucius was once queried on the subject. Tzu Lu asked how one should serve ghosts and spirits. This is, again, from the Analects. The master said, "Till you have learned how to serve men, how can you possibly serve ghosts?" Tzu Lu then ventured upon a question about death and about the dead people. Till you know about the living, how are you to know about the dead? Likewise, consider Dongpu Jusi, honored as a Neo-Confucian poet and sage. It is said that once, during his free time, Su Zhangpo decided out of boredom to make some stew. An old friend visited him, and in the middle of the cooking, and challenged him to a game of Chinese checkers. Su totally forgot his stew until a very fragrant smell came up from the kitchen, reminding him. Thus, Dongpu's pork, a famous dish in Chinese cuisine, was discovered by a philosopher and completely by accident. Valuing earthiness means that Chinese religion acknowledges so-called feminine virtues and attributes equally, and feminine virtues and attributes equally with those typically thought of as masculine. Thus we read in the Tao Te Ching, "The valley spirit never dies. Call it the mystery, the woman. The mystery, the door of the woman, is the root of earth and heaven. Forever this endures, forever, and all its uses are easy. Male and female, light and dark, active and passive, all is in flux and in constant transformation, churning effortlessly into the continuous birth and death and renewal of the ineffable Tao. Still, there is naturally such a thing as ascendancy, and there is also degeneration. Such is the nature of all things, including governments and dynasties. So it is that each successive dynasty put serious energy into propitiating religious authorities and gaining their spiritual imprimatur. An all-powerful ministry of rites determined the dates of ceremonial observances. The Chinese calendar combines lunar and solar calculations, but the lunar cycle is the more important. After all, the waxing and waning of the moon is obvious to anyone. Solstices and equinoxes less so. Nevertheless, both are important because of their connection to the dominant and recessive phases of yin and yang, both cosmically and internally within one's heart.
Some say love, it is a river that drowns the tender reed. Some say love, it is a razor that leaves your soul to bleed. Some say love, it is a hunger, an endless aching need. I say love, it is a flower, and you, it's only seed. It's the heart afraid of breaking that never learns to dance. It's the dream afraid of waking that never takes a chance. It's the one who won't be taken, who cannot seem to give, and the soul afraid of dying that never learns to live. When the night has been too lonely and the road has been too long, and you think that love is only for the lucky and the strong, just remember in the winter, far beneath the bitter snows, lies the seed that with the sun's love becomes the rose.
Your fortune today. You are happy, wealthy, and wise. And on this note, remember, we are all together in this great fortune of abundance that we have. So will the ushers please come forward? Oops, one of those.
What am I doing?
Pat's jumping to the last song because she wants this to be over, I guess. So I'll do my part. We'll go fast. New Year's celebrations include honoring the terrestrial deities, that is, the gods of hearth and garden, cleaning the house from top to bottom, honoring the celestial deities, and then throwing a big party. There are public plays and parades. Sacrifices are offered to the gods and to ancestors. A meal is shared, and elders hand out money to youngsters. Then the family sits around the stove, chatting, joking, and playing games to see the old year out. Males take turns jumping over a pan filled with burning straw to symbolize a new beginning. Scrolls bearing auspicious words, prosperity, peace, and so on, are pasted on gateposts and throughout the house. In the modern era, such observances have been drained of religious content by all but the most devout. A few religious themes, however, prevail: concern for family unity, including fealty to the ancestors, and protection of children, hope for longevity and other blessings, and fear of resentful ghosts or generalized bad energy, along with attempts to keep such things at bay. Aside from these hopes and fears, the colorful traditions of Chinese New Year are expressions of traditional popular culture. Yin-yang, both and, ethics and insight. Such is the wisdom of China. Colorful dramatizations, enchanting dragons on parade, firecrackers, auspicious, hopeful postings, such are the delights of its new year. Celebrated over the coming 2 weeks, the Chinese year 4716, beginning this Friday, February 16th, is the year of the dog. That's why the dog on the front. One legend has it that in ancient times, Buddha asked all the animals to meet him on Chinese New Year's. Well, 12 came. And Buddha named a year after each one and announced that the people born in each animal's year would have some of that animal's personality. Those born in dog years are loyal, honest, and just. They can be nervous Nellies. Some dogs, I had one dog that was so nervous it made us all nervous. So people born in that dog year can be like that. But once a decision has been made, these people are steadfast in following through always. They're also good, very good, at helping others recognize and amend their bad habits. May it be so. And may all of us, whatever animal we're said to be influenced by, learn from incorporating the joyful Chinese spirit of festival and frivolity and its ancient, often whimsical, and deeply profound wisdom. So may it be. Amen and namaste. And to keep Pat from quitting, let's just bag hymn 195 and go right to extinguishing the flame.
Okay,
So you say the words and you do the extinguishing.
Wait, we're going to extinguish the flame. No?
We got extinguished.
Okay. These are great words. Think about it. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we are together again.
For all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. For all who seek a right path, may a way be found, and the courage to take it step by step. Amen. And now, Pat.
So yes, there will be coffee and good conversation outside. Please don't forget to sign up on the sheets in back here for the cottage meeting, and also see Elise for help in volunteering at Margaret's service. Thanks.
And if you want to come and make noise.
Ah!